We want to switch gears now following another big development out of Syria. Russian President Vladimir Putin has ordered a bulk of troops to start leaving that country. Putin called Syrian President Bashar al-Assad today to inform him of the decision. The pullout comes in the middle of a fragile ceasefire between President Bashar al-Assad's forces and rebel fighters. CBS News senior national security analyst Juan Zarate joins me now by phone. And Juan, I have to ask you, tomorrow marks 5 years since the civil war in Syria started. What's the motivation now for Putin to start pulling troops out at this point? What's behind the timing?
Jamie, I think President Putin is trying to take a symbolic act that demonstrates that he at least thinks that the regime has stabilized and that diplomatically and in terms of the battlefield, things have stabilized in favor of the Assad regime. And so in some ways, this is a measure and a step demonstrating power and strength. And the reality is that the Russians are going to keep their base, their naval base in Tartus. They're going to keep their air base near Latakia. And so they're not absenting themselves from the environment. But this is a symbolic move in the wake of the peace deal, the ceasefire, to demonstrate that Putin has confidence that things have stabilized and, frankly, stabilized in his favor.
I have to ask you, kind of along those lines, Putin has instructed his diplomats, as you were talking about, to be involved in that peace process in Syria. How important is Russia's role in trying to broker a deal in the country?
Well, it's an important role, in part because they've been the major backer for President Assad and the regime in Damascus. They also have links and ties to the Iranian regime, which has been part of supporting Damascus. And of course, their military intervention has played a key role in what's happened on the ground. And so what Russia does and says obviously matters. And I think the U.S. has also made Moscow a central part of any diplomatic deal. And I think, people are hopeful that the ceasefire here is beginning to bear some fruit, that it's lasting longer and it's been deeper in its effect than people had thought it would be, and that this could lead to a political transition. But at the end of the day, and the bottom line for Russia is they've accomplished, at least in the near term, some of their goals, which was to stabilize the regime in Damascus, to put the regime on better footing, and to inject a bit of legitimacy back into Assad's rule. And I think that's all happened since Russia has been involved, and certainly they've made themselves essential to any peace process.
It is interesting because when that ceasefire was first announced, many people thought it would only last maybe 24 hours, and it has lasted much longer, as you pointed out. Pentagon officials here tell us that Russia has been focusing its strikes against ISIS targets in Palmyra. Is this a move the U.S. is likely to welcome? And how does the withdrawal impact the overall fight against ISIS?
It's a great question, because the question all along has been, what is Russia's end game, and what are they actually willing to do on the ground? For most of their engagement militarily, they have been fighting opposition forces that have been backed by the United States. They've been less engaged in attacking ISIS infrastructure and sites. And so to the extent that the Russians are less involved in attacking U.S.-backed forces or allies, that's a good thing, of course. And to the extent that they're willing to train their military forces and backing of the Assad regime against ISIS or even Jabhat al-Nusra, the al-Qaeda affiliate, that's very good news as well. Overall, I think the U.S. will welcome a lessening of Russian presence overall, because that has aggravated the environment, certainly created tensions with Turkey, and aggravated, to a certain extent, the policy moves the U.S. can undertake. So, for example, the question of a no-fly or a no-drive zone has clearly been complicated by Russian military involvement. So all of that is helpful to the U.S. if the Russians are lessening their presence and, in fact, demonstrating that they're willing to fight ISIS as opposed to U.S.-backed rebels.
Juan Zarate, thank you so much for the insight. Really important there. Appreciate you coming on.
Thank you, Jamie.